What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here, and the war in Ukraine, it could go on a lot longer than a lot of people think. And President Zelensky just said so himself, and NATO just said so themselves as well. And it could cause a recession in the US and inflation in the US and prices in the US to go on even longer, as if our inflation here wasn't bad enough. This could make it go on even longer. That's right, check this out. Yeah, I covered this here in my last video. You should check this out. Gas prices are headed to $6 by Labor Day. Check that out in the previous video. But yeah, President Zelensky from Ukraine says that Russia is going to, quote, intensify the fighting. And he warns that this as Ukraine is applying to be in the EU, the European Union. And as the European Union is, quote, deciding on this, here's what President Zelensky has to say. Check this out.
Obviously, this week we should expect from Russia an intensification of its hostile activities, as an example. And not only against Ukraine, but also against other European countries. We are preparing, we are ready. Tomorrow begins a truly historic week when we will hear the response of the European Union on Ukraine's candidate status. We've already got almost a positive decision from the European Commission. At the end of the new week, the response of the European Council is expected.
Нікому не віддамо, все своє повернемо, і море буде українським і безпечним. І в Миколаєві, і в Одесі провів наради з нашими військовими, з усіма посадовцями, які відповідають за оборону, забезпечення цих областей. Заслухав доповіді щодо руйнувань, яких області зазнали від російських ударів, втрати значні, багато зруйнованого житлових будинків, перш за все, порушена цивільна логістика, багато соціальних питань. Доручив зробити більш системною допомогу людям, які втратили близьких, а все зруйновано обов'язково відновимо. Немає у Росії стільки ракет, скільки у наших людей бажання жити.
Yeah, and this comes as NATO chief says that Ukraine war could last for years in a new interview. Check this out. NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg said in an interview with a German newspaper that the war in Ukraine could last for years. And remember that the longer this lasts, the longer it's going to make gas prices remain high in the US and all around the world. Oil prices remain high or even go higher. Think about that. Remember the article that says, or the experts say, that gas prices could go to $6 a gallon on average just by Labor Day here in the US. And that doesn't even count California gas prices, which is already over $6. And remember, our average is around $5 a gallon here in the US. So this would be a whole dollar higher in the US for gas prices. And this would raise food prices as well, because remember, everything has to be shipped via semi, which is gas prices and diesel prices. So imagine if gas prices and diesel prices go a dollar higher by Labor Day, and this is all kind of exacerbated by the war in Ukraine. Food prices are at all-time highs in the US and all around the world. Now just imagine if this war goes on for years, not months, years. I know. It's unfathomable to even think about. Yeah, you could see here in this interview, Stoltenberg cautioned that, quote, nobody knows exactly how long the war will continue, reiterating that the country needs support for as long as Russia's invasion persists. Quote, we must prepare for the fact that it could take years. They told the newspaper, we must not let up in supporting Ukraine, even if the costs are high, not only for military support, but also because of rising energy and food prices. But that is no comparison to the price that the Ukrainians have to pay every day with many lives. Yeah, no kidding. This comes as U.S. lawmakers have already approved more than $50 billion in total assistance to to Ukraine since Russia invaded the country on February 24th. Now, just think of this. If the US has approved $50 billion in munitions and supplies and just cold hard cash in money since February 24th to basically June, imagine how much money this is going to cost if the war goes on for years. But I mean, what's the alternative? Yeah. And I mean, on the other side of the coin, it's not like the US can just go and attack Russia because the first thing they would do, I mean, Russia has thousands of nukes. So who knows what they would do? I mean, honestly, that's the only reason why the rest of the world probably hasn't stepped in because, well, Russia has nukes. If Russia didn't have nukes, this war probably would already be over. So yeah, that's why it's a really complicated situation, really just because of one word, nukes. And I know that there's going to be comments in the comment section like, well, Jimmy, we have nukes too, and other country have nukes too, but nobody wants a exchange of nukes. It's just not so we don't nobody wants that to happen. It would be an absolute nightmare. We'd have a collapse of stock markets around the world. We'd have a collapse. We'd have a financial collapse. You think inflation is bad now. You think a recession uh, is likely now, or some experts think we're already in the beginning of a new recession. Imagine if there was World War III and nuclear bombs were being exchanged. Yeah, it would be way worse. Even if Russia dropped a nuke on Ukraine and the rest of the world wasn't involved, there would probably be massive, massive stock market losses, even in the US. Even if the US wasn't involved, it would probably be just massive losses. And remember that around somewhere around 50% of adults have money in the stock market right now through their 401ks, IRAs, even pensions invest money in the stock market. Or just regular people that just have money in the stock market, even if it's not through retirement funds. So this is not something that we want to do. We really just kind of want to find a way for like Putin to try to end it and give him like an out. But they keep saying that they're going to see this through to the end, and they want to go all the way to the end, and so it's a yeah, it's just like it's a really difficult way to try to navigate through, like, how do we see this through to the end to actually prevent World War III, prevent nuclear war on either side, and actually get this to stop? Yeah, it's and really this could end in so many different scenarios. If you're actually kind of like if you actually kind of think through this, there's so many different scenarios that could actually happen. And that's really why, a lot of the countries, there's so many different countries that have supported Ukraine with money and munitions and military supplies, but they're all pretty much staying out of it when it comes to like troops and sending men in there. And they're basically saying, well, we'll give you supplies, but you have to do the fighting. So, and even Russia really doesn't like that, but Russia's having a hard time defending Ukraine on their own, let alone defending, 20 other countries. So, yeah, both sides are kind of walking the line. But the problem is do we want to walk the line for years more? How do we find a solution to end the situation? how do you make Putin happy with something like this and make Zelensky happy? Zelensky doesn't want to give up any of his country, but Putin doesn't want to come out as a quote loser and go back to his country looking like a loser. It's going to be hard to find diplomacy here and end the war. Yeah, and the problem is the longer this goes on, it's not the only cause that gas prices are high and food prices are high. I mean, we have other issues here. We have supply chain issues. We have the pandemic issues that kind of exacerbated this and started this. But the longer this goes on, it's definitely a major cause of a lot of. I mean, oil prices have just since the war started, or since they put 100,000 troops on the border. Remember all the people that said, "Oh, Russia will never invade Ukraine." Oh, they just put those hundred and some thousand troops just on the border. They're never going to invade Ukraine. Remember all those people that said that? I was thinking, why do you think they put all the troops there? Do you think they're just putting them there for fun? Yeah, I didn't think that either. But gas prices and oil prices have just skyrocketed in the U.S. and worldwide since then because well, oil is traded globally on basically on a stock market like exchange, and that's the kind of fear and stuff like this, and the fear of war and the fear of oil, and really those fears have somewhat come true. I mean, the U.S. has stopped buying Russian oil, and now Europe the EU has basically said that they're going to wean off Russian oil. They want to stop buying Russian oil as well completely at some point in the future. So really, the markets have been kind of correct. They basically said that we don't want to buy any Russian oil anymore. And there's very few countries that do want to buy Russian oil. So, one of the world's largest oil supplies, Russia is currently about the third largest oil producer. Saudi Arabia is number two, and U.S. is number one. But Saudi Arabia and Russia are basically they're pretty close to even. So, Russia and Saudi Arabia are basically number two or number three. They're pretty close in oil producer size. So really, you're taking Russia, which is like the number two or number three oil producer, and basically most of the world, almost all the world, is saying nobody wants to buy their oil. There are very few countries that want to buy their oil, and even China, who is was one of their best allies, and on any given day, you're not quite sure how much of an ally they are because they want to be their ally, but they also kind of don't want to side with a country that's being sanctioned very heavily by the rest of the world, and they don't want to get sanctioned. So they're walking a fine line as well. Yeah. So yeah, they're being strategic with what they're saying about everything they're going forward. But basically, the majority of the world is saying right now that we don't want to buy Russian oil. China's still buying it at this point, but it's a difficult thing because Russia's got all this oil and they're running out of buyers. So that's the problem. And now all the rest of the world has to supply oil without Russia's oil. So you can see the supply and demand balance is out of whack, and that is what's causing oil and gas prices to go higher. Meanwhile, OPEC and all the major oil and gas companies don't want to raise supply. They're raising it very little because, well, during the pandemic, they all kind of got crushed because, well, all the countries shut down. China had just had a massive shutdown. They're still kind of shut down. They were actually still in shutdown. And they had 400 million people in China in lockdown. And their lockdown was not anything like the US's lockdown. We're talking about lockdown with cages outside of people's homes. Yeah, there was nothing like the US lockdown, if you even call that a lockdown, right? Um, Lockdown in China, totally different type of lockdown. But this is the problem here. And if this continues to go on for another year or two, or 3, well, yeah, we're all going to be feeling the pain. Biden's approval ratings are already at his lowest, and yeah, check out my video before this. I'll link you to it about how he's considering pausing the federal gas tax and gas rebate cards, aka basically a stimulus. I'll link you to that next here. Make sure to subscribe down below to our YouTube channel if you haven't yet. It's completely free to do so you don't miss out on new videos that come out here every day. And then click the bell icon next to it so you get notifications as soon as we go live. You can click here to see my newest video on $2,400 Social Security raises that Congress is considering next. And here's my newest video on gas rebate cards that President Biden just said here. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.